Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this EFDRR pre-event on the Inform Risk Index. My name is Nick Ramos from the UNDRR Regional Office for Europe and Central Asia. Again, I'm pleased to welcome you to this session on the Inform Risk Index and the recent update and release of the Subnational Risk Index in Central Asia, the South Caucasus, and Southeast Europe. To begin with, I would like to invite Mr. Octavian Bivol, Chief of the UNDRR Regional Office for Europe and Central Asia, for his opening remarks. Octavian, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nick. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and colleagues, it is a pleasure to address you today at this pre-FDRI event on the Inform Risk Index. I anticipate that the exchanges today will be particularly fruitful in examining one of the most important priorities for reducing disaster risk, increasing risk knowledge, and putting that knowledge into practice in order to shape decision-making and build resilience. As we will shortly see, the results of the Subnational Inform Risk Index for Central Asia, South Caucasus, as well as Southeastern Europe, both aim to develop a common understanding of risk based on a rigorous and globally recognized methodology for assessing the factors that most increase or reduce risk. These considerations are based on a data-driven analysis of the underlying risk drivers, which can then be used to address the root causes of risk and improve DRR strategies, plans, and financing for the greatest possible impact. As the Sendai framework makes clear, there is a need for a member state-led, all-of-society approach that puts the prevention and reduction of disaster risk at the center of our planning and development decisions. The cascading nature of disaster risk, where one disaster can rapidly lead to another, coupled with insufficient investment in disaster risk reduction, makes the critical systems that trade, food, energy, transportation, and health rely on increasingly vulnerable. With the evidence and analysis offered by tools like Inform Risk Index, we build step-by-step a solid basis for plans and designs to ensure that public and private systems are made resilient in the face of future hazards. As we imagine a post-COVID future, there has never been a better time to rethink our social and economic systems through the lens of resilience. I hope that the discussion today will inspire us to think and act differently about disasters, shifting the focus from picking up the pieces after a disaster to risk-proofing our plans at the start of any development decision. And to do this, we need to base our decisions on an evidence-based understanding of risk. I thank you and wish the very best for this very productive and fruitful event. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Octavian. Next, I would like to invite Ms. Carmen Poliansek, Scientific Project Officer with the Joint Research Center, the European Commission, to give an overview of the Global Inform Index, the methodology, and the tool itself. Carmen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nicholas. It's really my great pleasure to be here today, and I'm honored to present Inform at the global and how it can have a benefits also at the local level. In case you have heard a lot about Inform before, but you still don't know what it is. So Inform stands for Index for Risk Management. It was developed back then in 2014. It was a new way to measure a risk of humanitarian crisis and disasters. So Inform can help us to identify where and why of crisis might occur, and which means we can reduce the risk, build people's resilience, and better prepare for when crises do happen. So something that can be useful for risk governance, not only at the international, that is global level, but also the local one. And I will try to do my best today to explain how Inform has been further developed, how it has been used at the global level, and how the same process and the benefits of it can be transferred to the subnational, that is local level. Next slide, please. Well, since the first release, Inforum has not only become a global reference for the multi-hazard risk assessment. Can we go back to the second slide? I see that it has. Thank you. It has developed into the suite of tools, suite of quantitative and analytical tools. They are designed to support decision-making at different phases of the crisis management cycle. So there is Inforum risk, for the prevention and preparedness, the Inforum severity index that supports mainly response, and Inforum warning, which is still in development phase and will monitor early warning signals to support preparedness and early action. On our website, you can find, next to the operational tools, which are regularly updated and upgraded, also tools in beta versions that has been developed for specific needs and for the testing new solutions, as well as tools in the development. Next slide, please. All Inforum products follow the same principles. They are global because they cover all countries and crises in the world. They are open because the data and methodology are freely available. And they are reliable because we are doing our best, that they are based on the best methods and data, and they are regularly updated. And the resulting Inforum products are flexible. That means it can be applied in different ways to make better decisions. And even more, Inforum is developed together with partners, which are a mix of users, decision makers, data providers, and technical specialists. They are coming from our organization all around from the multilateral system. And Joint Research Center of European Commission is the scientific and technical lead of Inforum, and United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs is a coordinator of Inforum partnership. And because Inforum is open source, the more organizations that use it, the more coordinated and effective we can be in reducing disaster risk. Next slide, please. Thank you. So let me explain first how does it works. Inforum risk simplifies a lot of information about risk. It is based on risk concept. It uses 80 different indicators to measure hazards and people's exposure to them, including all main type of natural and human hazards, vulnerability, and resources available to help people cope. Inforum risk creates a risk profile for every country. Each has a rating between 0 and 10 for risk and all of its components, so it's very easy to compare. So regarding the usage, you can prioritize countries by risk or any of its component parts. You can decide how best to reduce risk and monitor risk trends. And the same methodology can be applied for regional and national risk assessment, and Inforum can be adapted also for your organization. Next slide, please. As you can see, Inforum products are used by many, but DG ECO is the main user of Inforum products within European Commission. You know that European Union is the leading donor of humanitarian and development aid in the world by far. And there is also Commission's commitment, which is reinforcing evidence-based policy making. Therefore, DG's ECO tool for humanitarian aid needs assessment and funding allocation is being revised. And there, Inforum products became the principal source of data and indicators. Next slide, please. So, because Inforum is open source, it has many advantages. But on the other side, it's very difficult to follow who is using it. So, in general, we can say that the advocacy of Inforum is its weaker part. When it is used for the analysis and decision-making processes, it is generally supported and promoted mainly internally within organization and eventually used in internal tools for strategical programming and not open to the public. Therefore, we decided to make a little survey of our users, and we displayed the statistic of the results of this survey on our website, and it's still ongoing and daily updated. And let me use this opportunity to move from the global to the local level now. Next slide, please. Informed subnational risk models uses the same approach as the global informed risk, but is adapted to a region or a country level. The first three levels of the model are fixed across all informed models, while the rest is tailored to specific local context and populated by existing subnational level data that reflects hazards and other conditions from these areas to measure risks. An informed subnational risk model captures a detailed picture of risk and its components at the provincial, municipal, or village level that is comparable across a region and a country. Therefore, it is possible to do all the things you can do with the global version, like prioritize and compare risk between areas and monitor trends. This can help you identify risk areas and determine the major risk drivers, which can help you to decide how to best manage it. In support, the Global Inform Initiative envisioned a sustainable business model of development, implementation, and maintenance of each new informed subnational. We have provided guidance, technical support and tools, and also established a roster of experts. Next slide, please. While supported by the Global Inform Initiative, sustainable business model requires a strong local ownership that is related to the clear purpose, policy, or program, dealing with the challenges of keeping up a model up and running, engagement with national providers of data to make it work, and taking care of further developments aligned with the new needs or data. And such local ownership can be in the hands of government, intergovernmental organizations, non-governmental organizations, or any other relevant group. However, each of the existing informed subnational model is an experience of its own. Let me go through a few examples. Central Asia and Caucasian case. This was one of the first informed subnational models and also part of our learning process. It has been done by OCHA with the full support from GRC. And that was the point when we realized how difficult and how important it is to take care also of the maintenance of the model. Recently, the model was taken over by UNDRR with the financial support of Usaid with a successful new release in 2021. And through this same initiative a month ago, another subnational informed model was finalized, and that is Southeast Europe with the 3 pilot countries. There is another nice example. It is a health region. It's developed by the regional ISC and managed by OCHA, and it has been used in the humanitarian needs overview to support coordination of preparedness actions. Another very nice, positive, but also very challenging experience was with the Latin America and Caribbean subnational model, where informed subnational proved to be beneficial tool for humanitarian and development planning and implementations by national decision makers. It is a proof of successful tandem of national ownership and sound technical guidance and support from onset through the maintenance and further developments. It has been done with the support of UNICEF, DG ECO, and also at the beginning with the support of GRC. Next slide, please. The Informed Subnational Risk Index achieves its ultimate goal when informed subnational becomes a tool in hands of national authorities to design the national DRR strategies. And because Inform Subnational is developed collaboratively and results in an open, shared analysis of risk that can be used by many organizations, it can be particularly useful to facilitate the reading of risk information by national decision-making, common understanding of risks that your country is facing by a wide range of actors involved, for example, strategic government, humanitarian, or development planning or resource allocation processes, and allowing comparability in space and time, prioritization, and transparency, as well as providing evidence for DRM planning processes. And with Inform Subnational model, we actually expanded the initial and purpose of global Inform risk to be a national risk assessment tool. And as a risk assessment tool, which can be placed at the heart of national policy cycle to implement integrated disaster risk management. Next slide, please. Then, Inform Subnational risk can also support countries in many issues raised by global initiatives, such as Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction and Sustainable Development Goals. And with recognizing the tandem of Sendai Framework for DRR and Inform Subnational risk model, let me, in conclusion, emphasize again all benefits when Inform Subnational risk model becomes a tool in hands of national authorities. First, Inform Subnational risk model can satisfy minimum requirements that allow countries to comply and implement Sendai Framework for Action, especially Target E, that is having disaster risk reduction strategy, and Target G, having information of disaster risk reduction available and accessible. And second, on the other side, this creates a unique opportunity to enhance the quality and the coverage of the indicators that fit Sendai Framework Monitor and Sustainable Development Goals. With the inclusion of those indicators into global Inform risk, we can better monitor risk reduction globally. And with closing this circle, we can successfully link risk-related global issues with local problems and local issues with global problems. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this overview, Carmen. That was very interesting. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Władko Janowski, head of the Disaster Preparedness and Prevention Initiative, DPPI, for Southeast Europe, followed by Galia Ibrahimova and Dimitar Chakov from UNDRR, to give an overview of the recently updated and developed subnational Inform models for Central Asia, South Caucasus, and Southeastern Europe. Władko, over to you.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, colleagues, for inviting me. It's a pleasure for me to be part of this session, because we have worked a lot in this past year on the Risk Inform Index, and this is actually the first public presentation of of the results. Not to take the screen too much, to allow Galia and Dimitar to continue with presenting the results, allow me to express my gratitude to the UNDRR office for the patience, support, and willingness to include DPPI in this exercise. I also want to thank all the colleagues in the National Civil Protection Departments in the 3 pilot countries that were included in the exercise. They proved to be an incremental part for the results. Why are these results important for the Southeastern Europe, for us as DPPI? First, and also this is echoing what Carmen just mentioned, first is because they were developed in joint cooperation with the national authorities. And we also had valuable contribution from other UN agencies and other regional entities like the Southeastern Europe Health Network. The process itself included constant consultation with them, which created a sense of ownership of the process and its outcomes. We proved together that we can influence on the actual design of the model and its results. There were quite a few back and forward sessions with our partners in order to agree on the model. But at the end, we succeeded. This is a crucial part for the second phase, and that is the implementing the results into practice. Second is that by implementing a single model of risk informed in 3 countries, we are having comparable results, which is the main goal for me, if you ask, on risk informed. The ranking of the risk in 3 countries is now enabling us to identify challenges in vulnerabilities and coping capacities in more systematic way. How to actually do that is easier said than done. We will invest in the next year in promoting the results and finding suitable ways for the countries to see a benefit from having the model. Only through this, if we show that the model really works and that they have real specific measurable results from being part of the model, we can succeed to create more disaster resilience communities, but also to involve other states from DPPI and from the region into this exercise as well. So on that note, thank you once again for having me here. I'm open for any questions, discussions that might follow from the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vlatko. Galia and Dimitar, please.
Can we open the presentation, please? Thank you. So I'm Dimitar Torchkov. I'm working with the UNDRR and DPPI on development of this model with the masterminds of this operation, Nick, Galia, and Vlatko, which are my close colleagues working on this Inform Subnational Index compilation for the Southeastern Europe. Today we are going to present the 2 of the indexes developed for the Southeastern European countries and countries in the Caucasus and Central Asia, which is the model update after 4 years. This is 2021 model update after 4 years from the previous subnational model for the regions. This is the main results, the main findings of the models. On the left side is the Southeastern European model. On the right side is the Caucasus and Central Asian model. Here we can see the model. The models are subnational models. First model is for 3 countries in the Southeastern Europe, covering 45 administrative units at first level, while the model on the right, Caucasus and Central Asia, covers 83 administrative units over 8 countries. Why is this inequality sign between the models? Because every model is specially tailored for the specific regions. We cannot compare regions in Central Asia with regions in the Balkans, disaster-wise, or the population-wise, or the territory-wise. Some regions are bigger. Some regions have a specific hazard that is confronted upon them. So that is why the models should be observed separately. Also with modern econometrical complex techniques, all of the regions are divided in risk class, which is the main purpose of the Inform compilation. The borders for the margins for the risks are different for the the Balkans and the Central Asia and Caucasus model. So we will go through the results after in the next slides. So as Mrs. Polyanczak explained thoroughly, the model have the informed risks indexes are composed of 3 dimensions. We have hazard and exposure, vulnerability, and lack of coping capacity that are participating by 1/3 in the overall informed risk. The categories are also the same in all models, whether are globally, nationally, subnationally, subregionally. We have 2 categories composing each dimension. The dimension hazard and exposure is composed with human and natural hazard. Vulnerability is composed with the socioeconomic vulnerability and vulnerable groups. Lack of coping capacity is composed of infrastructure and institutional coping capacity. Why the models are different? As I mentioned at the beginning, all of the regions are facing special natural risks. For example, in the Southeastern Europe, there are several types of disasters included, which are not included in the Caucasus and Central Asia model, because Central Asia is not that prone to disasters as the Central and Eastern Europe. Also, in the lack of coping capacity for the Caucasus and Central Asia, as it is presented on the slide, there is economic indicators or regarding the GDP growth that are not included in the Southeastern Europe. Whether in the Southeastern Europe are included vulnerable groups such as pensioners, victims of family violence, social protection benefits, etc. All in total, 68 indicators in the first model. In the second model, 62 indicators. Could you please go on the next slide? So I will present the main findings of the Southeastern European model. We see the overall risk, which eight regions in Albania are in the darkish red color, which is the very high risk, whether the rest of the regions are facing less risk in comparison than those regions. In the hazard and exposure component are included several 2 categories, natural and human, composing on several indicators, as I've said: earthquakes, landslides, floods, wildfires, epidemic indicators. In the human components is the projected conflict risk and technological hazard. All of those things are indicators are normalized from 0 to 10, and it is they are compiled using different sources, from international to national to subnational, and normalized to on scale to 0 to 10. So I will go fast through the results. In the hazard and exposure, the most risky regions are Podgorica and Bielopolje municipalities in Montenegro, Shkoder, Leže, Durrës, and Elbasan and Tirana in Albania. In Albania, the main driver is the natural risk, whether in Montenegro is the human risk factor, most probably the technological risk factor. You can see all the capitals are Skopje, Tirana, Podgorica are in the high risk from hazard and exposure dimension. Next dimension is vulnerability dimension, composed of 2 categories: socioeconomic vulnerability and vulnerable groups. We can see all the indicators included in the calculation. we can see that logically Lege, Shkodër, and Tirana are the most vulnerable regions after the catastrophic earthquake Andrejevica in Montenegro. Consequently, the lack of coping capacity is composed of institutions and infrastructure with the corresponding indicators. From lack of coping capacity, the Polog region in Republic of North Macedonia is the most affected. Shkodër, Fier, and Tirana among the most affected regions in Albania. Institutional factors contributed the most to the higher risk of lack of coping capacity, and Polog is due to the infrastructural risk. Thank you very much, and over to Galia. Thank you for communicating with me with assistance. Over.
Hello, colleagues. Can you please move to the next slide? Yes, the next one. Okay, so I'm going just briefly to introduce you to the results for Central Asia and Caucasus model. Just to give you background information, as Carmen already mentioned, the model was initiated in 2015 by Regional Interagency Standing Committee Task Force for Caucasus and Central Asia. And the first results were released in 2017. And starting from last year, UNDRR Regional Office for Central Asia and Caucasus, in collaboration with Center on Emergency Situations and Disaster Risk Reduction, took over the model and updated it, and just released 2 months ago the results for 2021. So it kept the risk index was calculated in total for 83 subnational units. And on the map, you see the darker the red color means the higher the risk level. So all of the regions in Tajikistan, as you see in the map, are in the high risk class, while several other subnational divisions in Kyrgyzstan, Georgia, and Azerbaijan are also in the very high risk. The other areas are relatively has a lower risk. Next slide, please. This is the risk index distribution by risk classes and countries. On the vertical axis, it's the risk classes, and the risk scores are from 0 to 10, and the horizontal axis captures the countries and its subnational divisions that has the highest and the lowest values within the country. Please move to the next slide. So the hazard and exposure, the first dimension of informed risk, has certain components and indicators that are tailored to the region. And for this model, their natural category has the earthquakes, landslides, floods, and droughts. And in the human component, projected conflict risks and current conflict risks and the relevant indicators. Can you please switch to the next slide? Okay, so this is the map of results for hazard and exposure. So on the map, there is 6 regions that are 6 subnational units with the highest values for Caucasus and Central Asia. An underlying risk driver for Caucasus is in a human category, while for Central Asia is a natural hazards category. Yeah, next slide, please. So the vulnerability dimension also measured through number of region-specific components and indicators across 2 categories: socio-economic vulnerabilities and vulnerable groups. Can you please show the map? Next slide. So this is the map, gives you a better understanding of the model. It's again, it highlights 6 regions in Caucasus and Central Asia with the highest values for their vulnerability in the vulnerability dimension. So underlying risk drivers in the vulnerability section are for Caucasus is a vulnerable groups, while for Central Asian countries, it's both social economic vulnerabilities and vulnerable groups. Next slide, please. In the lack of coping capacity, as my colleagues also earlier said, that there are 2 categories, institutional and infrastructural categories that captures different components on economy, humanitarian capacity, government effectiveness, and in infrastructural capacity, communication, physical connectivity, access to healthcare. You see on the maps that also 6 highest subnational units in this dimension are shown on the maps. And their main underlying risk driver for Caucasus in this dimension is institutional category, while for Central Asia, it's both institutional and infrastructural components. Next slide, please. This slide captures trend analysis for 2 models released in 2017 and 2021. You see the general trend that risk going for 2 countries in Caucasus going up, while one country is slightly going down. In Central Asia, majority 2 countries are going slightly down, and the 2 more is risk level is going down, while for one country it is stable on the stable rate. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the data sources for both models for Southeastern Europe and Caucasus and Central Asia. Here, I would like just to stress that national statistical agencies, national agencies, ministries and committees on emergency situations and civil protection, Red Cross, Red Crescent organizations, UN agencies, and many other organizations are key to this process. And they were they were part of this project and contributed data and also the regional initiatives such as CSDRR, GPPI Secretariat, Health Network for Southeastern Europe countries were really central to this process. Next slide, please. There was several challenges that we outlined. Data availability was really one of the biggest challenges. Then the national and subnational support was a bit of difficulty because although their whole process relied on their extraordinary support from regional initiatives, and in Southeastern Europe countries, in addition, national authorities supported the whole process. And however, the lack of administrative capacity in the local sub-regional level within the countries caused underrepresentation of all actors at national level. While in Central Asia and Caucasus, regional interagency standing committee task force was the platform to discuss and produce the results, and national authorities engaged in the process mainly as data contributors. Further engagement of the partners were hampered due to the COVID pandemic. And another challenge was the correlation of international assessment procedures and the realities. So in this challenge, more investments into explanation of the informed processes, data compilation, data disaggregation, and manipulation should be done. And use cases, although there are several general good cases of use-informed results for Caucasus and Central Asia, some more use cases on the findings for Southeastern Europe countries needs to be done. Next slide, please. A few takeaways from the experience working on both models. That is, partnership and collaboration is key to the process, and it can be used as an incentive to enhance reporting under the internationally recognized initiatives such as Sendai Monitor or Desinventor platform. Then Inform, Risk Subnational for both regions can serve as a policy and institutional strengthening and sectoral support tool, especially indicators that are included in both models can contribute sectoral specific analysis. And use of Inform for preparedness, prevention, and response to emergencies can contribute to each of these disaster management cycle phases by bringing tailored analysis. Next slide, please. So the detailed results on the Inform findings, including the data behind metadata, data sources, dates, and availability at national, subnational levels, all can be found on the official Inform's website, or it is placed on the JRC's website that Carmen already showed to you, and the links are available, including also for this time, we were able to develop interactive dashboards where you can play around with the numbers and use it for your analysis. So the links are there, or you can just Google typing in Subnational Inform, and the first results will be popped up and take you to the website. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vlatko, Dimitar, and Galia, for this technical dive into the results of the index. Next, I would like to open up the floor for our invited panelists to share their experiences using the Inform Risk Index in their various functions. First, I would like to invite Mr. Akashev, Director for the Center for Emergency Situations and Disaster Risk Reduction, CESDRR. Mr. Akashev, the floor is yours.
Добрый день, уважаемые дамы, уважаемые господа, уважаемые коллеги. Во-первых, я хотел бы сказать спасибо тем донорским агентствам, которые, скажем так, нашли эту работу очень важной и выделили финансовые средства. И, конечно же, UNDRR и до этого другие организации, которые подключились к этой работе для того, чтобы сегодня мы могли обсуждать индексы, субнациональные индексы риска. Почему я хочу остановиться на некоторых моментах, которые были проблемами. Были проблемы, были трудности. Я знаю, как мы начинали эту работу, по крайней мере, я буду говорить по 2021 году. Для того, чтобы проделать эту работу, нужно было очень много показателей, очень много данных, достоверных, официальных от каждой страны там, и так далее. Уважаемая Галия сказала, так мягко, что были определенные проблемы, трудности. Реально была проделана действительно сложная работа. Было некоторое недопонимание со стороны наших государственных структур. И, скажем так, в конечном итоге я скажу, что сегодня мы можем сказать, что мы получили достаточно хороший результат в этом отношении. И в конечном итоге понимание того, что невозможно эффективно, качественно снижать риск бедствий, снижать уязвимость, усиливать потенциал, если мы не знаем, с чем мы имеем дело. Индекс риска, если мы не определимся с опасностями, с подверженностью, с потенциалом, с уязвимостью и так далее. Вот почему эта была работа очень важна в этом отношении. И правильно говорили выступающие, что сегодня мы уже, скажем так, имеем реальный инструмент для того, чтобы наши государственные структуры, чрезвычайные ведомства, которые принимают решения, которые в конечном итоге отвечают за реализацию мер по снижению риска бедствий, поняли, насколько это важно начинать работу именно с этого. И я не знаю, сколько времени я могу говорить, но хочу сказать, что мы совсем недавно провели региональный форум совещания глав чрезвычайных ведомств стран Центральной Азии. И вот успешно смогли презентовать вот этот Subnational индекс риска, довести до глав чрезвычайных ведомств, до других участников этого форума, а там было более 60 человек, и очень много и с международных организаций, неправительственных организаций, научных учреждений и так далее. И я думаю, что результатом этой работы стало то, что главами чрезвычайных ведомств были приняты протокольные решения об одобрении проделанной работы, о том, чтобы и в дальнейшем поддержать эту работу и на ее основе реализовывать меры по снижению риска бедствий, предупреждению и ликвидации чрезвычайных ситуаций. Я, как директор центра, хочу сказать, что нам предстоит и дальше, для того, чтобы обеспечить устойчивость, работать над этим. Нам передано дальше для того, чтобы мы продолжали эту работу и доводили ее до логического завершения, чтобы она не останавливалась, чтобы она была применима в нашем регионе. Как вы знаете, стран Центральной Азии, по крайней мере, 5 стран, они как 5 пальцев, все разные в этом отношении. И хорошо, что сегодня мы уже можем сказать, что принимаются реальные меры по расширению, укреплению регионального сотрудничества в сфере снижения риска бедствий, предупреждения, ликвидации чрезвычайных ситуаций. И результатом этой большой работы стало то, что сегодня уже одобрена региональная стратегия развития в области снижения риска бедствий стран Центральной Азии. Это огромное продвижение в этом отношении. И сегодня уже стоит задача реализации этой стратегии в рамках реализации Синдайской рамочной программы, в рамках обеспечения устойчивого развития и выполнения глобальных целей устойчивого развития. Поэтому что хочется сказать? Еще раз хочу поблагодарить за всех экспертов, ГИС-специалистов, IT-специалистов, кто занимался картированием. Это была сложная техническая работа. Это было внедрение инновационных, информационно-коммуникационных технологий. И, как я уже говорил, нам остается только обеспечить, чтобы эта работа была применима на практике всеми странами Центральной Азии. И в этом мы видим свою задачу. Большое вам спасибо всем за проделанную работу. Поверьте, мы понимаем уровень своей ответственности, доверие, которое оказывается нашему центру в этом регионе. И хочу тоже сказать, что сегодня уже наш центр признан, и нас уже поддерживают наши страны в этом отношении. И думаю, что мы успешно справимся с этой задачей совместными усилиями и постараемся реализовать все те приоритеты, результаты, которые перед нами ставит Синдайская рамочная программа. Спасибо еще раз всем, уважаемые коллеги, за совместную работу. И еще раз хочу уверить, что мы продолжим эту работу и будем достойны вашего доверия в этом отношении. Спасибо.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kashev. Next, I would like to invite Mr. John Patterson, the Regional Humanitarian Advisor from Usaid Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, for his remarks. John, please, over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Nick, and thank you to UNDRR for putting this on and for all of the incredible work that you guys have done on putting this together this year. Big thanks also to JRC, to UNOCHA, to all of the many parts of the Inform family for the great work that you all continue to do. This year, we at USAID are particularly excited to be able to partner with UNDRR to put this subnational index out. It's something that we feel is very, very important, and something, like I said, that we're very excited to be much more a part of than we have in the past. Now, certainly, we've been a part of it in the past in the sense that, we certainly used it. We've certainly benefited from the great work that has been done to date. But to be able to partner even more strongly this year is something that's very exciting for us. Just a quick kind of background on how we're starting to really integrate the Inform Risk Management Index into our planning and into our response and implementation. I'm the Regional Humanitarian Advisor for the Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance that covers Eastern Europe. And one of the big things that we have been doing over the course of the last few years is really trying to, build out and improve our disaster risk reduction portfolio in the region. It's an area that, we have a small footprint in, certainly not as large as some other donors, but it's an area that, we feel strongly we want to get in and make contributions, some coordinated contributions as best we can. And as we've started to do that, we weren't, in other regions of the world, such as Latin America or East Asia, where the Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance has been doing disaster risk reduction for years, in some cases decades. In many ways, we were starting from scratch here in Eastern Europe. So we relied quite heavily on the data from the Inform Risk Management Index, and reaching out to the folks who manage it. And it was really a critical tool for us as we started to re-engage and started to do that planning. But, even in areas where, we do have the established presence and we do have the longstanding programs like in Latin America, this is such a valuable tool for us when we start to do our strategic planning and helping us to identify the areas where we really want to partner and areas where we really want to invest. We don't think, an index is never going to replace some of the real hard work that you have to do in getting to these places and talking to the community leaders and really kind of identifying what the specific needs are. It doesn't replace a lot of that, kind of traditional planning or that traditional humanitarian work that must happen, but it improves it. It helps us to target where we want to go. It helps us to really improve how we are serving the beneficiaries and how we are partnering with our partners. So it's really such a critical piece in how we do that, and it's becoming more and more a part of how we officially do our business. I think certainly we're probably not to the point where our colleagues within the European Union, especially ECHO, are. I saw that infographic about who's been downloading the Inform Risk Management Index. I'm very impressed to see. It looks like ECHO is the number one user. Maybe in the coming years we can give you guys a run for our money. But it is becoming more and more part of how we do our business. We've just recently finished our planning for our next year in 2022. And, whereas a few years ago, when you would include the Inform Risk Management Index in your analysis, you might get a couple of questions from people in Washington saying, well, what is this? I don't know what this is. This year, it was standard practice for every country in the world to include the applicable, Inform risk indices, whether it was the risk index or whether it's the severity index. That's now standard practice for everybody within BHA. So that's something that I think is really important and really exciting, and it's becoming more and more a part of how we do our everyday business. And then the other piece, we're excited to provide some more resources to this and engage with it. But it is the other piece that I think is so important is that this is open source. So when we provide support to the Risk Management Index, the fact that Inform is open source and can be used by everybody, we feel strongly about that. That's so important. It doesn't help us if we're the only ones who can see this and use this. This is a tool for the entire international community. And so, for that as well, we are really appreciative of the great work that's been done. I think it's going to become more and more a part of certainly how we do our planning and how we respond. So, I'll keep it short. That's all I have to say. But again, a big thanks to everybody, and thanks for having me today.
Thanks so much, John. So next, we would like to go to Mr. Juha-Pekka from Mr. Juha-Pekka Japula, Policy Officer from the European Commission, DG ECHO, for his reflections on the use of Inform. Mr. Japula, over to you. Seems as though there might be sort of a technical issue. So in the meantime, why don't we go to Ms. Mira Dasic, who is the head of the Southeastern Europe Health Network Secretariat, to take the floor. Ms. Dasic, over to you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to address you on behalf of the Southeastern Europe Health Network Secretariat at this European Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction. I wish to congratulate the organizers for providing us with this platform for discussion. When approached by the Disaster Preparedness and Prevention Initiative for Southeastern Europe to contribute and implement the project on the Global Inform Risk Index in member states of bilateral mandate, Southeastern Europe Health Network Secretariat took a great interest. The countries that participated in the pilot assessment are Albania, Montenegro, and North Macedonia. Southeastern Europe Health Network Secretariat in particular supported the data collection of health-related indicators as part of the Subnational Inform Risk Index for the above-mentioned countries. The process started in January 2021, and we had ensured commitment from the respective ministries of health. Using the subnational Inform model for Southeast Europe, data has been gathered at the first administrative level, corresponding to the subnational regions, capitals, and municipalities of Albania, Montenegro, and North Macedonia, in total for 44 administrative units. As it was already mentioned, the Inform model is based on 3 dimensions of risk: hazards and exposure, vulnerability, and the lack of coping capacity, to provide an overview of the underlying factors leading to humanitarian risk. Thus, the results are of particular importance to health actors, reflecting on the preparedness of the national systems. From the other side, the COVID-19 pandemic reminded us of how important is the preparedness and resilience. These 2 areas are largely discussed during the last 2 years, especially on how we can improve them and be prepared to an eventual new threat. At this point, I believe that the subnational and the regional cross-countries collaboration and coordination between international actors shall trail a comprehensive and timely preparedness and response action to emergencies. In this respect, the first step would be to share the results and raise awareness on the current situation with the government stakeholders. This can be done in various ways during the bilateral meetings, in the framework of the Southeastern Europe Health Network plenary meetings, and by using the next year platform of the Ministerial Forum. We shall back our communication efforts with solutions by providing capacity building to the countries, or even dive and select the riskier regions, enhance capacities, and ensure transfer of knowledge and practices from the better off to the less safe regions. At the same time, our efforts could be channeled to streamline fundraising to this priority and support all the activities proposed earlier. The Inform Index supports a proactive disaster risk management framework. It will be helpful for an objective allocation of resources for disaster risk reduction and management, as well as for coordinated actions focused on anticipating, mitigating, and preparing for humanitarian emergencies. It also identifies areas for improvement in national disaster data availability and compliance with implementation of Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, sustainable development goals, and other global initiatives. In conclusion, I wish to remind ourselves how the COVID-19 pandemic just brought preparedness to disasters back into the top priority line. And we shall use the created momentum to build upon it and use it in the future. Despite all the challenges that we have, we keep our work centered to better serve the Southeastern Europe Health Network member states. Finally, I wish to emphasize the importance of the topic and to highlight the particular fruitful cooperation of the Southeastern Europe Health Network with all parties involved, the Secretariat of Disaster Preparedness and Prevention Initiative for Southeastern Europe, the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, and the governments of the Southeastern Europe Health Network member states involved. I express my thanks on this occasion and encourage this practice to continue in the future to strengthen the regional cooperation within Southeastern Europe. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dasic. So next I would like to try again with Mr. Juha-Pekka Jepola, Policy Officer from the European Commission, DG ECHO. Mr. Jepola, please, over to you. It looks like it's working.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, and sorry if I was away for a while. Of course, I had a connection error just at the moment I was supposed to speak. As mentioned, I work for the European Commission and specifically for the department that handles humanitarian aid and civil protection. And I think it will be a bit of a loop back to what Carmen was talking in the beginning, more to the global indexes and so on instead of regional ones. And we use the Inform indexes for a lot of different support support the decision making from acute emergencies to the whole annual budget and so on. But I'll just show you one application where we use it, which is called the Forgotten Crisis Assessment. And the reason being why we show this one is that we have just recently improved the methodology or updated it according to the new tools and so on that Carmen in the beginning showed. And I'll just go forward here if my clicker works. So first of all, a definition for the Commission for the Forgotten Crisis. First of all, it has to be a severe and protracted humanitarian crisis. So it cannot be a light or a relatively new crisis. Second of all, it shouldn't receive any international aid or insufficient aid. So not the top 10 of crises that receive funding at the moment. Third of all, it shouldn't have a political commitment or endeavors for its solution. And fourth and last, it should have a lack of media interest. And these 4 criteria are how we define our forgotten crisis and how we use, or how I will go to the methodology later on, how these criteria are met. The purpose of the forgotten crisis assessment is, first of all, to have advocacy purposes, to highlight visibility and on the forgotten crisis that actually do not get media attention, are not on the lips of all the people all the time, and so on, that there are crises that might not be at the forefront of our thought all the time. But second of all, as has been the topic, that these are the assessment is used as allocation of our minimum level of funding, 15% of our humanitarian aid budget. So if I remember correctly, it is about 1,900 million per year is the Commission's humanitarian aid budget. So 15% of that should be committed to forgotten crisis assessments. Like I mentioned, there has been recent updates in the past year to this methodology. On the left, you can see the former methodology, and the right, the new one. It hasn't changed a lot, and there have been minor tweaks here and there. For example, our quantitative points have increased from 75% to 80%, and there is a slight change to the prioritization scale. Formerly, we used to scan for all categories of aid, for example, development aid as well. But with the recent improvements to our keywords and so on, we only focus on humanitarian aid at the moment. So, for example, epidemics, conflicts, natural disasters, and so on. There is slight changes to the media coverage keywords as well. And we used informed risk already, God knows how many years, I'd say at least 10 years, or since it has been in place. But the latest update has been to include informed severity that Carmen mentioned in the beginning. And this methodology, we have created and improved it in cooperation with the Joint Research Center and with Carmen, among others. Here it's a lot of text and a lot of points, a lot of different colors and so on. But here is pretty much the whole methodology, how we assess our forgotten crisis. And all of these respond to the criteria, the 4 criteria that were mentioned in the beginning. And if you start from the left, is the so-called Oblivion pillar or the Oblivion Index, which is in layman terms or in normal terms would be how forgotten is the crisis. There is first of all the humanitarian aid per capita, which corresponds to that the crisis shouldn't be receiving too much funding. So we take from the UN Financial Tracking Service, the FTS, the amount of funding, and we divide it per capita. And capita here means people in need, which we get from UN OCHA data per crisis. So the funding per persons within the crisis. Second of all, the media coverage that was mentioned, that it shouldn't have a lot of media attention, the crisis to itself. So we have a tool called European Media Monitor, EMM, which is totally public and you can Google it. And with that, we scan pretty much all global media, maybe not the smallest media in the world, but I think he has over 500 at least media sources. And we use keywords on humanitarian aid like conflict, epidemics, diseases or food security and so on, to scan how much media attention is each crisis getting. And then if we move to the right a little bit, we have severity and risk indexes. A little bit to the left back. Thank you. So we use both the new informed severity index and the a bit older informed risk index. All of the global assessments that are there, as well in the methodology. I think we have discussed, or you had discussed already enough about that, so I won't get any more into details about that. And then if you go to the right, as was also mentioned, that it cannot always be a totally quantified result, where we fund or how we assess a crisis. So we use our experts in the field. Across a lot of field offices and regional offices around the world, so we have experts over there who also, of course, have the field experience from the crisis itself. So we have a big survey to them, and we use a couple of the questions from the survey annually also to assess the forgotten crisis. For example, there was a mention of that there shouldn't be a political commitment to its solution. So we use 2 questions from our big funding survey: the governments and local authorities' willingness to respond to the crisis, and the expected outlook for the crisis in terms of humanitarian needs, in terms of complexity. And our experts around the world assess these 2 questions, and they answer on a closed questions from a scale from deteriorating to increasing and so on. And these are then quantified. They are allowed to insert also free comments and their judgments and justifications and so on to it. And we also ask our experts plainly, do they consider the crises within their country? Are they forgotten? So all of these combined compromises the methodology. And on the left is the 80% quantitative information that is purely numbers coming from the indexes and the different tools, EMM and humanitarian aid per capita. And on the right is the more qualitative or expert information based on the experts on the ground, how they view it. And these are all combined naturally to 100% in it, and it goes into our annual funding cycle and process and so on. But if I can, again, my clicker works. Well, can you go to the next slide, please? So my clicker is apparently not working. Here is a bit easier way to understand it, how all of that massive information works. So you have 2 axes over here, low severity and risk on the left, and on the bottom you have low oblivion, so low forgetfulness, and on the right and top you have high forgetfulness and high severity and risk. So if a country is at the left and bottom, it might be forgotten, but the crisis is still considered light and it has a light risk. So for example, there will be Jordan and Turkey and Mozambique. And just to mention, these are a bit indicative. They might not be totally correct at the points of the boxes of the countries, but they give you an idea how the methodology works. On the upper left, you would have crises that are forgotten, but they still have a low severity and risk. So they might be forgotten, but they do not have, according to our methodology, they do not have sufficient amounts of people in need, or the crisis, the conflict is not as severe as our methodology would need it to be. So there's Malawi, Trinidad and Tobago, and Tanzania. On the lower right, you have crises that are not forgotten, but are very severe and have a very high risk. So there's naturally Syria, Yemen, and Lebanon over there. But on the top right, you have a crisis that would be then considered within our methodology because they are high severity, high risk, and they have been forgotten. Burundi, Ukraine, and Colombia, for example. And if we go, this is the last slide in which I will conclude, but as mentioned, we do this assessment annually, and here is the latest assessment after it goes through our validification and our funding allocation and to our management process and so on. Of course, it cannot contain all of the forgotten crises and so on. There is a cutoff point, so there are 16 crises over here. And this is, might not be on the internet and so on, but this is public already. All of the crises that ECHO has decided for for next year that will have the 15% of our funding, annual initial funding, and so on. And I don't think I will go into any detail about these. They're divided into regions. You can see that Africa, Asia, and Latin America and the Caribbean are a bit more pronounced than Europe and so on. But I will conclude here, since it's been already a long session, and I thank the UN and all the other participants for their time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Japala. Next, I would like to go to Mr. Klajdi Nikola, Director of International Cooperation and Projects Department, National Civil Protection Agency of Albania, for his remarks. Mr. Nikola, the floor is yours.
Hi to everyone. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have just a short word for Risk Inform, because we are so honored to be part of Inform Risk initiative, and we are very happy because this initiative is in our vision for the future, for the implementation of disaster risk reduction strategy that Albanian government is doing from 2022. In the same time, we are part of DPPI, and this is very important for the DPPI missions too. And we are very thanks for that, because this kind of initiative brings for our country the same methodology, not only for Albania, but in the same way in the harmonization with all the other countries that are in cross-border countries and in the regional countries. We are part of the Sendai framework too, and we are focal point for Sendai framework, and we are honored to be part of that. And I'm very, very, very thank you for this initiative, and I hope to do in the future soon as possible initiative like that, maybe with the pilot in the other levels too, and to going to in the municipality levels and in regional level to going to do the same, and to have information that will be more specifics, that will help us to have the clear idea of all the big pictures of our information and our data. With that, I'm not saying that we didn't have the data before, but it is very important, this initiative, because like you know, our agency is a new agency. From 1 year that we are working hard to do the best that we can by our new law for the civil protection in Albania, and we are doing now the one big reform in this concept, and the agency is trying to do the sub law and all the acts by the law that is important to follow the framework of Sendai framework concepts and all the European civil protection concept, to be part of in the same methodology. I'm so sorry, maybe because I don't have the data in front of me, because I was in another meeting, and I have another meeting after 30 minutes too. So I explain my feedback without any papers, any preparation. But this is what we mean and what we want for the civil protection in Albania. And we are so thank you for all the stuff, Galia in front of all, because we had contacts all the time with Galia, and we didn't meet each other, but we are like family, because we are more than 1 year that we talking all the time, and we match the things together. And it was very important for us. Last things that I want to introduce, that our GIS sector take some example from the informed risk data methodology, for example. And in real time now, for example, we are implementing some of these things in our operations. Daily operations. So I think it's very important to going to do more and more with this initiative. So thank you for all of you, and sorry again because I wasn't prepared. So I just thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nicola. So with that. I hope it was a fruitful and interesting session, an informative session on the Informed Risk Index and the subnational models, how it can be used, how it's developing for the future as well. With that, I would like to conclude and thank you for joining, and to please enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.